Welcome to Best of Reddit. Be sure to subscribe as we upload new content daily. One-party consent recordings, the kryptonite of butthole supervisors. I'm a paramedic and after many years of working regular ground ambulance I decided I had enough. My whole career I was either a glorified Uber driver, being spit on by drunks, bit by meth heads or chauffeuring people between hospitals, though once in a blue moon I saved a life. There isn't a lot of different jobs you can parlay an M's career into, so I elected to move into the private sector and got a job doing basically the same thing at a mine in a remote environment, worked 2 weeks straight with 2 weeks off, less stress and an enviable salary. On the surface this was a sweet gig, almost heaven compared to the regular stretcher jockey job I came from, and it would have been such if not for the absolute psychopath who managed the M's services out there. I didn't work directly from the mine's operator, instead I was employed by a contractor. The coordinator, my local boss, as he was called, was a golden boy as far as the mine company was concerned. There wasn't a butt he didn't kiss or big wig he wouldn't suck up to, and I admit he could be charming, quite adept at impersonating a human being actually. It wasn't long before I discovered he reserved decency for everyone but his subordinates. His behavior started out as petty micromanaging, which was irritating, but then progressed to insults, put-downs, name-calling, "Hey dummy," was his usual way to get my attention, and outright hostility. The man clearly enjoyed being a small-time workplace despot and knew he could get away with it because of his reputation with our paymasters. It was around the 2-month mark before I really warmed up to my co-workers. There were 8 of us including myself and the chief, and not a single one of them spoke a nice word about him. Most were resigned to him acting like a massive butt because the 2-week holiday every month along with the pay rate. They also told me every complaint only fell on deaf ears, provoked retaliation, and again his relationship with the client made him near untouchable. This is when I started recording everything and did so with these 2 assumptions. 1. The company would only act with serious proof of malfeasance. 2. His acts of dastardly would only escalate. Neither assumption proved false. I had nearly 3 months of audio tapes of him being just his regular butthole self before he went too far. About a week into the shift I showed up to our station and was called into his office only to be informed I was being let go and my replacement would be there in a few hours. I was to go back to our accommodations, pack my crap up and report back there. Well heck, I thought before doing as I was bidden. Upon arriving back to the office with my suitcases, this sadist started laughing and said, "No one's coming to replace you. You're so freaking gullible." It was a mock firing and I'm sure he feverishly jacked himself off to it later that night. I was livid and let loose on him, finally ending a tirade with a malicious hint. Can you imagine what the office would do if they could have heard all this bullcrap? Unrepentant to the last, he coldly stared at me before replying, "Can you imagine what they would do if a bunch of empty beer cans turned up and I told the office I saw you drinking?" Having recorded all this and knowing my glorious victory was assured, I feigned capitulation to carry on with my day. My first day off I sent in a detailed letter to the company along with recordings, and as expected they fired his butt. What came after was righteous cackling laughter, for hours. I wonder, is this how Napoleon felt after winning at Austerlitz? Our next story is my final day at my first high school when I got revenge on my teachers after signing my expulsion papers. It was glorious. Backstory, set in Australia early 1980s. Sorry that it's so long. Unfortunately, I am someone who was severely bullied by classmates from as early as primary school and had already been to 2 primary schools by the time I started high school. I was a very intelligent child who was reading Dr. Seuss books on my own before I started primary school, so thanks to my advanced skills in reading, spelling, grammar and comprehension I would easily win spelling bees, get through my reading assignments and many other subjects, including German as a second language, quite easily. Though maths was and still is my weakness. This earned me a lot of bullying from my classmates, which I would often report to the teacher, but this would earn me even more intensive bullying. By high school I was a bored student and this boredom led me to failing year 7 and needing to repeat the year. I had been enrolled into a school further away in the hope that I wouldn't have my primary school bullies in any of my classes. But unfortunately there were a few classmates from my first primary school that remembered me or had friends from my first primary school. Part 1, on to the story of why my expulsion came about. Late November, just 3 weeks before the end of the school year. I decided to skip class to avoid my bullies, as I had taken to doing often, because I didn't want to go into class with red puffy eyes after another bout of crying due to being ganged up on by my tormentors during lunch break. Coming back around 20 minutes before the end of the day bell to wait for the bike shed to be unlocked so I could get to my bike, before I found the tires let down or slashed by my tormentors, I found a teacher waiting for me, as he obviously knew that I had wagged his class that afternoon and that I had ridden to school that day. He was a drama teacher who everyone called Nick instead of the usual title of Mr. with his spiky punked crazy colored hair, casual fashionable clothes and relaxed attitude towards many students, including his pets. He was very popular in the school. But he was possibly one of the worst of the teachers who allowed his little pets to torment me daily. Nick put his hand on my arm, gripping it quite firmly, demanding that I go to the principal's office with him. I pulled away from him and, without swearing or using an insulting tone, just made it clear that I will be going nowhere with him, and that as soon as the groundskeeper opens the bike shed that I was going home. He grabbed hold of my arm again, this time tighter, and trying to pull me along with him. I escaped his grip again, and this time I admit to swearing at him to keep his hands off me and that I will be going nowhere with him. Again he grabbed at me, and this time it hurt. So, having had done a few years of martial arts at the time, I defended myself by twisting out of his grip and using the heel of my hand against his chest, very firmly pushing him several steps away from me. The groundskeeper walked around the corner just at the moment I had pushed back at him. The groundskeeper was asked by Nick to go get the principal because I was refusing to go to the office with him. Of course, the groundskeeper did so. In the office, my mother was called and had arrived. I was given the choice between out-and-out expulsion with a letter to be sent to my next school or to leave willingly. I chose to leave willingly, of course. But as I went to interview after interview at several high schools, it became clear to me that after my interviews, when my high school was contacted, that the principal was filling them in about what happened, because I got several rejections and some rather leading questions about why I was leaving that high school. After that, I decided it was better just to come clean with my side of the story before they contacted the high school for more information on me. Finally got accepted to a high school on the condition that I would come to a teacher if bullied, or if I didn't trust the teacher, then to find a teacher, year coordinator that I could trust, or to come to him and that they would hear me out. Part 2. Now on to the petty revenge. It was necessary to finalize paperwork to formally exit that school as a student. So because Mum was working that day, I rode my bike there after lunch to get that done and get my revenge. Being someone who was very observant over the years, and the good luck that the teachers' parking was right by the library, and I had always been able to see them leaving from where I would sit in the library after school, often to hide from my tormentors after hiding my bike in some bushes so they would think that I had gone ahead of them. Well, these particular teachers of mine, who always turned a blind eye to their little teachers' pets bullying me, always parked in their preferred spots, would walk out to their cars together and start their cars within seconds of each other. So I had come to the school that final time with rotten eggs, baby potatoes and toilet paper. Hiding my bike in its usual spot, around 30 minutes before the end of the day bell, I then proceeded to put the eggs, baby potatoes and toilet paper into the exhaust pipes of their cars. Then I sat myself down in the same place as my bike, and to pass the time I opened a book to read for a while and wait for the show about to start. Well, the bell went and out came all of the students to make their way home. Around an hour later, these particular teachers came out together to their cars, and I could overhear their conversations, which included some revolting things about me. These teachers would park in a way that the trunk, of their cars pointed at each other. They got in after the saying their farewells and started their engines. Oh, the resulting show was glorious. Eggs, potatoes and toilet paper shooting out of exhaust pipes hitting each other's cars. The noise, confusion and mess was hilarious. It was very difficult to stifle my giggles in my hiding spot. I sat there until they went back into the building to get help, and then I took off on my bike as fast as possible and went straight home. This at a time when schools didn't have cameras everywhere for security, so there was no proof that I had done this. Of course my parents were called, but I denied it for many years and only let my parents know 20 years later.